Some pretty big news in this province. As of today, employers with 25 or more employees must have a policy outlining how, when, and why they electronically monitor employees. That can include an employer tracking the websites a worker visits or monitoring GPS on their delivery truck. Experts say the pandemic has fueled the market for workplace surveillance technologies, given the record number of people now working from home. To talk more about this story and trending tech, I'm joined by Mohit Rajhans. Mohit, what should workers know about this new policy and what exactly can a workplace monitor?
Well, I think we need to understand a little bit that in many cases, our work is already monitoring what we're doing on a daily basis. Those KPIs, those indicators that sort of come up in the way that we interact with these digital tools that we have, well, those are being spit out to human resource management and your manager, and your employee evaluation is completely changed now as opposed to the way it was even 5 years ago. So what I think we need to keep in mind are a couple of things. We have to keep in mind, A, how do we make sure that our employer has communicated with us what is being evaluated, how we're being evaluated, how is this right to disconnect applicable to us and in what context? Those policies aren't clear yet, Nicole. And we're unfortunately in a situation right now that until we figure out what the actual disconnection is and how that monitoring can stop, we're not going to be able to level set what the expectations of the employee can be.
And with some workplaces, the policies could be different from others. It sounds like a whole new work experience here. Is there cause for concern? Is there any oversight to ensure employees are not overly monitored?
No, I think unfortunately there's two things to consider here. On one hand, you have enterprise solutions, so businesses that have a lot of confidentiality with the information that they have, et cetera. And you can't let government into that in order to police something. Then on the other hand, you have the fact that many of these tools have been created prior to the pandemic, and many employees have signed off on them. But to give you a very clear example of how much this does not cover the entire, for instance, province or country, 38% of the workers are not qualified under this act of this right to disconnect. That's people who are considered government workers. That's people who are considered on jobs that are considered necessary services, et cetera. So where does that line really stop and start for people to disconnect? I think the bigger solution we got to look towards is how does a connected world actually become a little bit more efficient, rather than one that feels like it's constantly under surveillance.
Listen, we have more trending tech news. Everyone seems to be talking about Apple's new iOS update. I'm sure you've taken a look. What are some of the good and maybe not so good features here?
Yeah, Nicole, unfortunately, whenever Apple tries to come out with something that's great, they always sort of fumble a little bit, and you'll get the update after the update, and you'll get security concerns. But in all reality, I think one of the biggest things that is a mistake with Apple in this version is that there's so many features. And there's so many features when it comes down to messaging and editing messages and sharing pictures and being able to collaborate. But one of the tricks in all of this is their entire ecosystem isn't connecting properly. So some people have the watch. Some people have their photos backed up on an iCloud. Some people use a specific browser where you can't actually do things the same way. So the iOS update, unfortunately, is facilitating so much for the imagination and so many great things for people and how they could do things finally, but it's unfortunately missing the mark on how people are already connected. So it'll take a little bit, like it usually does with Apple, it'll take a little bit for everything to sync up properly. And I do think the one thing that people forget sometimes is just recently, Apple has agreed not to have trackers within a lot of their apps. And so that's going to change the way a lot of your apps can work, including some of the ones that you use on a daily basis. So that's something to consider as a result of some of the negative associated with at least the functionality with this current update.
Mohit, thank you for bringing us up to speed on all the tech trends of the day. That's tech expert Mohit Rajhans.